The second module in B604, Ethics 2, is called Religion and Equality, and we study that from a Christian viewpoint. The technical terms that you need to be familiar with begin with equality. This means that when people are treated with the same legal rights and respect. A principle is a belief that can't be changed. Racism is when people are discriminated against because of their racial background. Remember, discrimination is when you act on your prejudice, and prejudice is when you prejudge people on the basis of stereotypes before you know them as people and as human beings. Race is to do with the ethnic background of people. Gender is whether they're male or female. Religion in general is a commitment that people have to a set of principles, teachings, or beliefs. Missionary work done by fundamentalists, evangelical Christians, is when people travel to meet others so they can share their religious beliefs and try to convert them. Evangelism is the same as missionary work, when Christians go to meet people and try and convert them to Christianity. Being ecumenical is the liberal Christian approach, where they want to travel and meet other peoples and discuss and share ideas with them about their religious thoughts. Forgiveness is when people do not hold grudges, and reconciliation is when people make up and forgive each other. Now, there are 5 parts to the contents of religion and equality. The first part is all about the biblical teachings on equality, and I'll go through those with you in a moment. The second part is Christian attitudes towards racism, where you apply those teachings about equality, and equally the third bit is about applying those teachings on equality to issues about gender. The fourth part is about attitudes to other religions, and the fifth bit is about forgiveness and reconciliation. So let's begin with biblical teachings about equality. You'll remember that we have a mnemonic, fat leg LJ, to help us remember 8 teachings that would support the idea that Christians believe that everyone should be treated equally, no matter what race, gender, or other religious group they belong to. So, for instance, all Christians should be treated with forgiveness, no matter who they are. All Christians should be treated with agape love. They should be treated with patience, kindness, and nobody should be getting angry with them quickly. Everyone should be treated fairly. You should be loving your neighbour. Everyone's equal. People should be treating others as they'd wish to be treated themselves. People should be loving each other in the same way that God would love everyone. And finally, people should judge themselves before they judge others. That's the mnemonic fat leg LJ. So, the idea would be that Christians would use those teachings to inspire the way they behave towards other people. They would be forgiving, they would be loving, they would treat people fairly, they would see everyone as their equal, and so on. And in the exam, you need to spell those teachings out clearly and explain them in detail. So the second part of the module is about how you'd apply those teachings to the concept of race and racism. Remember, racism is racial prejudice put into action. It's racial discrimination. To be racially prejudiced is to look at certain races as inferior. So, for instance, Adolf Hitler regarded the German race as a superior race to the Jewish race. Racial discrimination is when you put that racial prejudice into practice and you treat people less favourably because of their racial background. So, for example, that might be that an employer might not call someone to an interview because of their racial background. So, Christians believe that this is all wrong, and that regardless of your racial background, you should be treated fairly and equally within the law. They would use the teachings of Fat Leg LJ to justify that viewpoint. Having said that, there have been situations where Christian nations like Britain have behaved very badly towards other racial groups. The example of the slave trade is a particularly bad situation where Britons treated black Africans as less than human and made lots and lots of money by selling them into the American colonies. So whilst there has been some hypocrisy, nevertheless, modern-day Christians would believe that racism is wrong, racial prejudice and racial discrimination should be fought against, and that in the Bible there are at least 8 teachings which would be against racism. Notable figures who fought against racism are Martin Luther King, who used non-violence in the Americas in the 1950s and 60s. Nelson Mandela and the African National Congress, who are effectively liberation theologists who did use violence against the apartheid or racist government in South Africa. And a man called Trevor Huddleston, who was a non-violent protester leading people against the racism that happened in South Africa.